Welcome to this session on TEE learning. Every Sunday we have it at 9 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. We have organized this program under the auspices of Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists Bangalore, which is IACTA chapter. And I'm grateful to Dr. Suresh Gaste and PM Chandrasekhara, who were the pioneers of cardiac anesthesia in the state of Karnataka. And they started this in the mid-90s. The Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists was started in mid-90s. And Jagadish and Dr. Murali Chakravarti were closely associated. I also joined this forum sometime in the later part of 90s. So with that brief backing about the Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists, I would like to talk to you about the comprehensive TE examination. I'll just share my screen now. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me and you can see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comprehensive intraoperative TE examination is essential to be able to have a wholesome idea about the heart's structure and function during the intraoperative setting. You know that echocardiography is a powerful diagnostic and monitoring tool which has become standard of care in cardiac operating rooms and in intensive care units. It has also invaded into the emergency medicine department. When you get a critically ill patient in the emergency, echocardiography is able to identify the abnormality within a couple of minutes. So today we will focus on transesophageal echocardiography examination of the heart, and we talk about comprehensive views, and this comprehensive views include 20 standard views, and the comprehensive examination is necessary for three main reasons. The reasons are that first one is to identify the abnormality and confirm the diagnosis. And the second one is to get baseline findings. What are the baseline findings before the case actually is subjected to surgery after anesthesia is given? And also to identify normal abnormal anatomy. And in as many as 13% of the cases, you will be able to identify new findings which are unexpected, or it may be incidental findings which might not have been noticed in the preoperative echocardiography. So this is very essential, because if the lesion which is incidental has to be addressed at the same sitting, that can be done with the use of by utilizing the echocardiography examination. The first guidelines for performing comprehensive intraoperative multiplane transesophageal echocardiography examination was published in the Journal of American Society of Echocardiography in 1999, which is about 21 years ago. This was the standard method of examination, which is shown diagrammatically. There are 20 standard views. And in 2013, Indian Association of Cardiovascular Cardiac Anesthesiologists published 20 standard views plus 6 additional views. And just after that, this is the diagrammatic representation of the Indian publication in 2013. Our group presented it. And also this group recommended the sequence of TEE examination. And diagrammatic representation is shown here. Whatever is in blue is venous. Whatever is in pink or red is arterial. Just after 1 month of our publication, the American Society of Echocardiography revised their guidelines and they added 8 views in addition to the 20 standard views. So it became 28 views, and this is published in the Journal of American Society of Echocardiography, and the 20 views plus 8 additional views are shown here. Coming to the indications, when do you have to do transesophageal echocardiography? We are basically interested in intraoperative echocardiography. But echocardiography is also necessary in managing patients in the outpatient departments when TTE is not diagnostic or TT is deferred because it is highly it is not conclusive. So such, especially when you are looking at the left atrial thrombi and other pathologies like patients who have prosthetic valves and you want to in detail assess the prosthetic valves or aortic pathologies, TE is very handy in the outpatient departments. Intraoperatively, TE is recommended in all open heart procedures. That is, whenever the cardiac chamber is open, it is indicated. In coronary artery bypass grafting, it depends upon the decision of the team. If there is mitral regurgitation which has to be assessed, or new ischemic changes you want to identify, or if there is any hemodynamic compromise, you would like to identify the abnormality, then it is indicated in coronary artery bypass grafting. It's also used to guide the transcatheter procedures, such as the aortic valve replacement in the hybrid catheterization lab using percutaneous techniques. And in the intensive care units, TEE is useful, especially when TT is not possible because of surgical dressings on the chest, or the patient is obese or has chest wall edema, and patient is not able to cooperate with the positional changes which is needed for TTE. In such cases, TEE can be used. These are the 4 main indications. That is, first is in the outpatient department. Second is intraoperatively, that's where we are involved. In the guidance for transcatheter procedures, it can be a mitral valve procedure, or it can be aortic valve procedure, or it can be some other procedure which is done in the hybrid lab. And then in the critically ill patients where the thoracic window is poor and you need to get the information. So in such cases, we can use the transesophageal echocardiography is indicated. Coming to the contraindications, the absolute contraindications are mentioned on the left side of the slide. If there is esophageal stricture or tumor, diverticulum, esophageal perforation or laceration, we cannot use transesophageal echocardiography. If there is upper gastrointestinal bleed, if really important, you can do only the mid-esophageal views, and transgastric views may be avoided in these patients. The relative contraindications are mentioned on the right side of the slide. This can be done in the presence of an expert when the TG is becoming important. The insertion of the probe is relatively easy in intubated patients. We are talking about intubated patients because we are working in the operating rooms. If you are doing this in the outpatient department, patient's upper airway has to be anesthetized, but we are doing this under anesthetic conditions. Patients be intubated. The important things is that we must use a mouth guard or the bite block. That is absolutely essential, not only to prevent injury probe, but also to ensure patient safety. The other point is that it has to be lubricated sufficiently or generously, actually generously it must be lubricated. If there is resistance encountered, it should not be passed across the resistance with force. We must use a laryngoscope to pass the probe. Then coming to the standard words which are used, if the probe is pushed into the esophagus, it is called advance. It is called advance, and if you are withdrawing, if you are pulling it out, it is withdrawal. And the probe can be anti-flexed, which means that it is bent forwards, retroflex, which means it is bent backwards by using the big knob on the control of the probe. And we can change the multiplane angle from 0 to 180 degrees, which is called as rotate forwards if you are increasing the angle from 0 to 180, or if you are decreasing the angle from 180 to 0, it is called rotate backwards. And the probe also can be flexed right or left by using a small wheel on the knob, and this is called flex to the right and flex to the left. Coming to the windows, we have the upper esophageal window, which is about 20 to 25 centimeters from the lip in an average adult person. And we have the mid-esophageal window, which is most commonly used to start with. Mid-esophageal window you encounter at about a distance of 30 to 35 centimeters from the lip level in an average sized individual. And we have the transgastric window where the probe is passed into the stomach and it is anti-flexed to be able to see the heart from the diaphragmatic surface. This we get at about 40 centimeters in an average adult. And we have the deep transgastric view where you insert the probe or advance the probe little further into the stomach and acutely anti-flex the probe. This is the deep transgastric view where we can see the heart from the apex of the heart. For example, as is shown in this picture. These are the four standard positions within the esophagus and stomach, and these are called as the windows. So whenever we describe a particular position, particular view, it usually starts with naming the position of the probe in terms of the tip of the probe present in a particular place. For example, if there is a 4-chamber view, we say that it is mid-esophageal 4-chamber view. Similarly, if it is in the stomach, we start saying that it is transgastric view. So these are the windows which we need to know. And when we describe the views, we sometimes take the analogy of the picture shown here. This is the Mercedes-Benz, which is used to describe the short axis of the aortic valve because it resembles the Mercedes-Benz sign. Then we have the seagull, which is sometimes used to describe the mid-esophageal mitral valve commissural view. There are 2 wings. So 2 wings represent the portions of the posterior mitral leaflet, and in between the mitral valve portion is the anterior leaflet. Then we say that fish mouth appearance. This is usually described, used to describe the mitral valve opening in a short axis. And we have the smoke, which is the term used to describe the formation of rollo in the left atrium in patients who have mitral valve disease, especially mitral stenosis, when there is stasis of blood in the left atrium and the red blood cells produce an appearance of a smoke in the left atrium, and that's called smoke. That's why it's called smoke in the left atrium. And we have the trouser. If it is inverted, this describes the features of the pulmonary artery dividing into the right and left main pulmonary artery. You invert the trouser, and the hip portion of the trouser is the main pulmonary trunk, and you have the right and left pulmonary arteries. This is seen in ascending aortic short axis view, the pulmonary artery shown as inverted trouser. So these are some of the analogies which are used to describe for easy understanding. Coming to the first transesophageal echocardiographic view, we have the mid-esophageal 5-chamber view. Mid-esophageal 4-chamber view. This is the mid-esophageal 4-chamber view. The diagrammatic representation is shown on the left side of the screen. You have the left ventricle on the right side, left atrium in the near field on the right side, right ventricle on the far field on the left side, and the right atrium in the near field on the left side. So the left-sided structures are on the right side structures on the left side of the screen. So here atrial septum, the left atrium, right atrium. Then you have the interventricular septum, which is dividing the left ventricle and right ventricle, and the mitral valve and the tricuspid valve. The mitral valve, the portion of the mitral valve which is on to the left side is the anterior mitral leaflet, and that on the right side is the posterior mitral leaflet. You can see that anterior mitral leaflet is longer and posterior mitral leaflet is shorter as compared to the anterior mitral leaflet in this window, and this constitutes the A2 segment of the mitral valve, and this will be the P2 segment of the mitral valve. This is the A2 segment of the mitral valve, this is the P2 segment of the mitral valve, and coming to tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve, 2 leaflets are seen here. Tricuspid valve has 3 leaflets, but only 2 leaflets are seen here. This is the septal leaflet. You can easy to remember. It is in association with the interventricular septum. This is this septal leaflet, and if you notice, the septal leaflet attachment is slightly inferior or more apical as compared to the anterior mitral leaflet. This is a differentiating point, especially in congenital heart disease, when you want to identify which chamber you are dealing with. The position or attachment of the leaflet to the septum gives a clue that we are dealing with the right ventricle. And this leaflet, which is on the left side, can be posterior or anterior tricuspid leaflet, depending upon the position of the probe. In slightly higher positions, it will be the anterior tricuspid leaflet. In positions which are little lower position of the probe in this chamber, in this view, you will see the posterior tricuspid leaflet. So the tricuspid has 3 leaflets, the anterior, posterior, and the septal leaflets. So invariably this leaflet is septal mitral leaflet, septal tricuspid leaflet. And you also will see the moderator band on the right ventricle, and this should not be mistaken for a mass in the right ventricle. And here you can see that this is a 4-chamber view in a patient with mitral stenosis. The right ventricle is larger than the left ventricle. Normally the right ventricle is 2/3 size, the size of the left ventricle, so you can make out that the right ventricle is enlarged. And the left ventricle is underfilled, and hence it is small in this case. And you are seeing the mitral leaflets here. The posterior mitral leaflet is fixed. You can make out that it is not moving. So the characteristic of rheumatic mitral valve is that there is thickening of the valve, there is immobility, there is calcification and subvalvular fusion. These are the four features of mitral valve in rheumatic heart disease. So you can see that the positive mitral leaflet is totally fixed. The anti-mitral leaflet is restricted mobility. It is not opening fully, and there is doming of the mitral leaflet, and the opening is hardly, we cannot make out the opening in this case, in this view. And this is what I refer to as the smoke in the left atrium, because of the stasis of blood in the left atrium, because there is obstruction to the flow of blood from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and this is a precursor of clot formation. And in this case, the clots are attached to the left atrial roof of the left atrium. And next view shown here is the mid-esophageal commissural view. So the multiplane angle is increased to about 40 degrees. You will get the mitral commissural view. This movie is not moving. Anyway, this is the picture showing the commissural view, where we have the A2 segment of the anterior mitral leaflet in between, and you have the P3 and P1 segment of the posterior mitral valve on either side of the anterior mitral leaflet, which resembles a seagull, and hence sometimes described as mitral valve looks like a seagull, with the body of the seagull being A2 segment, the wings being P3 and P1 on either side. If you further increase the angle to about 90 degrees, we get the two-chamber view. We have increased, this is the multiplane angle, which is shown on the left upper part of the screen here. You see the two-chamber view, the left atrium, the left ventricle. And in this view, invariably, you are able to see the left atrial appendage here. You can see the left atrial appendage. This view is important for us to know look at the left atrial appendage, especially to detect any thrombi, and also the left upper pulmonary vein will join the left atrium, and that vein can be seen at the upper right hand corner of the image. So that left upper lobe pulmonary vein venous pattern is important for us to look at the diastolic function, and also we look at it in patients with mitral regurgitation to determine the severity of mitral regurgitation. In this view, we are seeing the anterior wall and the inferior wall of the left ventricle, and the mitral valve here, on the left side is the P3 segment, and on the right side you get the anterior mitral leaflet A1, A2 and A3. Most often you can see the whole length of the anterior mitral leaflet in this view. This is the two-chamber view. And then next is the mid-esophageal long axis view of the left ventricle. So you have increased the angle to about 120 to 130 degrees. Here you see the left ventricular long axis. Left ventricle in the long axis, this is the interventricular septum. This is a bit of the right ventricle, and sometimes you can see pulmonary artery opening here. And then the starting of the aorta or the aortic root is well visualized here. This contains the annulus, aortic annulus, then the aortic leaflets, then the aortic sinuses on either side, and then the proximal ascending aorta. And the junction between the sinus and proximal ascending aorta is called as the sinotubular junction. So you will see the aortic valve on the near field on the right upper part of the image, and the mitral valve on the left side of the image. This is the A2 segment of the anterior mitral leaflet, and the P2 segment of the anterior mitral leaflet, P2 segment of the posterior mitral leaflet is seen on the left side of the image. So this is the A2 and the P2. A2 of the anterior mitral leaflet, P2 of the posterior mitral leaflet. And the aortic valve leaflet here, what you see is the right coronary cusp in the far field, and this cusp can be non-coronary or left coronary. It can be either non-coronary or left coronary depending upon the orientation of the probe in terms of the aortic valve. So this one will be the left ventricular outflow tract, and this is the left ventricular cavity, and you can also see the interventricular septum, which in patients who have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy will be thickened more than 1 centimeter. So the thickness can be measured if you freeze the image and caliper the thickness in diastole, and if it exceeds 1 centimeters, it qualifies to be labeled as thickened or hypertrophied. So here we are seeing left atrium, left ventricle, mitral valve, aorta, the aortic valve, the interventricular septum, the right ventricle, and the pulmonary artery sometimes may be seen here, especially if it is enlarged. This is the mid-esophageal mitral valve, mid-esophageal left ventricular long axis view. The next image shows the presence of a left atrial myxoma. This is the myxoma which is going from the left atrium to the left ventricle through the mitral orifice, trying to obstruct it. And these patients may present with features of mitral stenosis, and they may have mild low-grade fever, and they are at risk of embolism of the small bits and pieces of the myxoma if it gets detached from the main mass. So this is how it looks like. Then we are going to see the aortic valve short axis in the mid-esophageal window. This is the mid-esophageal aortic valve short axis. The diagrammatic representation is here. We have the left atrium here in the near field. This is the interventricular septum. Then this is the right atrium, and this will be the tricuspid valve, the right ventricular body, right ventricular outflow tract, and the pulmonary valve will be seen. Here the concentration is usually on the cross section of the aortic valve. There are 3 leaflets which are almost symmetrical, and this is the Mercedes-Benz sign. You see the left coronary cusp onto the right side. This is the right coronary cusp in relation to the right ventricle, and you have the non-coronary cusp. This is the non-coronary cusp in relation to the interatrial septum.
ஏங்க கண்ணாடி எட்டிட்டு போட்டுருவானுங்க இந்த டிப்பு.
Can you please unmute your mic, please? Please unmute your mic. So this is the short axis of the aortic valve, the left coronary cusp, the right coronary cusp, and the non-coronary cusp. Easy to remember. This one being in relation to the right ventricle, this is right coronary cusp. Interatrial septum, this is the non-coronary, and this is the left coronary. If you slightly withdraw it, you can see the opening of the left main coronary artery from the left coronary sinus. You can see it here, or you see that this is the left main coronary artery opening from the left coronary sinus. Now, if you increase the angle, multiplane angle to about 120, we get the mid-esophageal aortic valve long axis view. This is the aortic valve long axis view. It is something similar to the LV long axis in the mid-esophageal window, but only thing is the concentration here is on the aorta. You can see the starting of the aorta much better, and all the pathological features in any patients with aortic valve, aortic root can be easily delineated in this view. Next view is the mid-esophageal bicaval view. In the same position with the multiplane angle of about 100, if you turn the probe to the right side, that is, you just turn the probe in its entirety to the right side a bit, you will get the mid-esophageal bicaval view, where in the near field you see the left atrium and then the interatrial septum and the right atrium. The left atrium, right atrium, interatrial septum, and on the Right side is the superior vena cava and on the left side is the inferior vena cava. This view is important for us to identify the breach in the interatrial septum, especially if you put a color Doppler and decrease the color gain to about 20 to 30 centimeters per second. It will be easy, we can easily identify left to right shunt as the blood passes through the interatrial defect. Interatrial septal defect, you can see the flow of blood from the left atrium to the right atrium, which will be blue in color. The blood is going away from the probe. So with color Doppler, it will be blue in color. And next view, which is shown here, is the ascending aortic short axis view. This is what I meant by saying inverted trouser. This is the main pulmonary artery, the trunk of the trouser, and you have the right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery, and this is the cross section of the ascending aorta. This is the cross section of the ascending aorta, and here what structure you are seeing is the pulmonary artery catheter, which is moving with the cardiac cycle. So this is the mid-esophageal aortic ascending aortic short axis view. This can be used to identify pathology of the ascending aorta, and also if there are any thrombi in the main pulmonary artery or the right pulmonary artery or beginning of the left pulmonary artery, it will be visualized. The left pulmonary artery cannot be seen in its entirety because of the fact that the left main bronchus comes in between the probe and the left main pulmonary artery. So this left pulmonary artery cannot be visualized unless you use special techniques. Otherwise, it's not visible. Coming to transgastric windows, we have here shown the transgastric long axis view. It is actually from the two-chamber view of the transgastric two-chamber view. If you increase the angle to about 120, we get the transgastric long axis view. And here you are seeing the beginning of the ascending aorta. This is the aortic valve. This is the left ventricle, the mitral valve here, and the left atrium somewhere here. So this view is important for us to assess the gradient across the aortic valve, because this is almost in parallel with the echo beam can be parallel with the flow of blood. So we could be able to measure the gradient across the aortic valve in patients who have aortic stenosis. This is based on the physical principle that for Doppler evaluation, you should have the bloodstream parallel to the echo beam for us to get the accurate velocity profiles of blood flow. Next one is the transgastric mid-papillary view. Here you have the two papillary muscle. This is the left ventricle cut in cross section. This is the anterolateral papillary muscle. This is the posteromedial papillary muscle. There are two papillary muscles in the left ventricle. There are two papillary muscles in the left ventricle, the posteromedial in the near field and anterolateral in the far field. And this view is very important to assess the volume status, to identify regional wall motion abnormalities in the mid segments of the left ventricle, and also the you can identify all the three regional wall motion abnormalities due to problems in the blood supply to the left ventricle belonging in the regions of the right coronary artery, left anterior descending artery, and the left circumflex. All the three arteries are represented in this view. We have the anterior segment, the inferior segment, the posterolateral, anteroseptal, anterolateral, anteroseptal, and segments in the represented in this view. So we can make out the regional wall motion abnormalities in any of these segments, and the fractional area change can be determined here. And coming to deep transgastric view, if you pass the probe further into the stomach and acutely anteflex the probe, we get the deep transgastric view, which is actually a long axis view, and the apex of the heart is here, and the mitral valve is somewhere here, and this is the aortic valve. This is the whole of this is the left ventricle. This is the anterior mitral leaflet, and this will be the interventricular septum. And this view is extremely important to determine the Doppler profile across the aortic valve in patients who have aortic stenosis or LVOT obstruction. So the Doppler beam goes almost parallel to the blood flow, and this view is easy or recommended for the determination of Doppler gradients across the aortic valve. The next view in this is the upper esophageal aortic arch short axis view, where we are able to see the pulmonary artery very clearly and the short axis of the aortic arch. This is the pulmonary artery. You can see the pulmonary valve opening and closing. This is the pulmonary artery. And then the long axis is shown here in the same window. This is the long axis of the aortic arch. Long axis of the aortic arch. This is the long axis of the aortic arch. I think I'll stop this, but we have crossed 9:30. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to deal with them. We'll be dealing with the additional views in the next session, so that at that time I will also look into the views which have not been covered this time. So coming from monitoring point of view, T is useful to assess the preload. It is useful to measure the intracardiac pressures and also the pulmonary artery pressures. And it is utilized to determine the cardiac output by looking at the LVOT VTI, that is the velocity time integral across the LVOT, and the LVOT cross-sectional area. We can determine information about myocardial ischemia. When you are de-airing the cardiac chambers, the degree of de-airing can be determined, and it's useful in diagnosing intracardiac masses. And on 28th of January at 6 o'clock, we have this webinar under FCA. Please join us. And any questions you have, next 5 to 10 minutes, we can deal with them. Do you have any questions? Was it clear?
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yes, yes.
Good morning, sir. This is Dr.
Good
Shankar Das
morning.
from Kolkata.
Yes, yes.
Can you please elaborate on the regional wall motion abnormalities that we can see in the deep transgastric view?
Very good question. We have the 3 arteries. I'll try to get that pictures. Right coronary artery, and then we have the is it seen? Is the picture seen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can see.
Yeah. So this is the anterior wall. This is the inferior wall. 1 minute, I'll put the pointer. We have the anterior, this is the inferior, infralateral, anterolateral, and you have the anteroseptal and infroseptal segments of the left ventricle in the mid section of the left ventricle. We have the basal, mid and apical portions of the left ventricle. So here we are seeing only the mid sections, mid segments of the left ventricle, and here the inferior and the infroseptal wall are supplied by the right coronary artery. Then we have the left anterior descending and the circumflex artery supplying the two segments each, namely the anteroseptal anterior, and you have the infralateral and anterolateral walls. These are being supplied by three different arteries, and the anterolateral papillary muscle has dual blood supply. It is supplied both from the left circumflex as well as the left anterior descending, whereas the posterior medial papillary muscle is supplied only by the right coronary artery. So here when you talk about regional wall motion abnormalities, it is considered to be normal contractility if the thickening and endocardial movement is about 30% or more. If the thickening of the wall is more than 30% and the movement of the endocardium towards the center is 30% excursion is there, then it is normal contractility, that is grade 1. Grade 2 is called hypokinesia when the thickening and the movement is 30 to 10%. That is mild hypokinesia. If it is 0 to 10%, it is severe hypokinesia, and if it is no movement, it is akinesia. On the other hand, if the segment is moving outward during systole, instead of moving inside, if it is moving outside, it is called dyskinesia, that is grade 5. So depending on that, we can not only identify the regional wall motion abnormality, but also to grade it according to the recommended number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 is normal, 2 is mild hypokinesia, 3 is severe hypokinesia, 4 is akinesia, 5 is dyskinesia. So you can determine that, and the presence of regional wall motion abnormalities normally means ischemia or infarction or a scar tissue. If it is bulging outside, it qualifies to be called as aneurysm, especially if it is little big. So these are the regional wall motion abnormalities which can be seen. But having said that, if patient is having stunned myocardium means patient had coronary artery occlusion, but we have recanalized the vessel either by percutaneous angioplasty and stenting or by coronary artery bypass grafting. We have removed the ischemia. We have corrected the ischemia. In stunned myocardium, though the blood flow is provided, the myocardium is not functionally recovered. So that is called stunned myocardium. So here it takes 24 hours to 12 to 24 hours or even 48 hours for it to make complete recovery, because there are some cellular changes in terms of calcium influx and oxygen free radicals being present there during the ischemic time, but that will take some time to rectify itself. So that is called stunned myocardium. Though the blood flow is there, the regional wall motion abnormality will be there. Then if you ask me, how do you detect that, whether it is actually ischemia or stunned myocardium? By echocardiography, it is difficult. If the surgeon says that my graft, I am very happy with the graft, or if you have any electromagnetic flow meters, you can detect, you can identify that the flow through the grafted vessel is good, despite the presence of a regional wall motion abnormality. And also there may be false regional wall motion abnormalities because of You might think that it is regional wall motion abnormalities because of acute alteration in the loading conditions or in pericardial disease, etc. So normally regional wall motion abnormality indicates ischemia or infarction. So especially if it is associated with ST segment changes on the surface electrocardiogram, that that is a regional wall motion abnormality because of ischemia. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
One more question.
Good morning, sir. I am Dr. Satyajit from Kolkata.
Yes.
Sir, my question is, among the deep transgastric long axis view and the transgastric long axis view for aortic valve, which
Yes.
is better? Which is better for the measurement of the gradient for the aortic valve?
Question. My preference will be for deep transgastric. Yes. My preference will be for deep transgastric long axis view at 0 degrees, 0 to 20 degrees, because the echo beam is very much parallel to the flow of blood. In patients whom we are not able to get the deep transgastric view, you opt to go for the transgastric long axis view at 120 degrees. That's the second option. My first option will be to go for deep transgastric long axis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dear
So now,
attendees,
yes, tell me.
no, sir. I'm just asking the other doctors or other trainees to if they are having any doubt, please clarify with you the same.
Yeah.
So which will be the best view to measure the RVOT gradient?
RVOT grade, very nice question. Again, the transgastric, deep transgastric RV outflow view will be useful. And if you are able to get the RV inflow outflow view very properly, and you can align the Doppler beam parallel to the flow of blood, you can use the mid-esophageal window also, where you have the wrap around, but it is usually not parallel. So preference is to go to transgastric views and turn the probe to the right to get the RVOT and then measure the gradient. What do you normally do?
So we are normally doing the mid-esophageal views.
No, for RVOT gradient.
What you said only, sir. We used to go to the transgastric view and we have to rotate the probe towards the right so that we can get the RV and PA.
That's right.
So for TAPSI also, it is the same view, or you have to like.
TAPSI, the first thing we do is the 4-chamber view, and then you go for the transgastric views. Both can be used.
Okay.
Any other questions? Please check. Please clarify your doubt with sir. Attendees.
Thank you for joining, and we'll meet next Sunday. I hope you will be benefited by these sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Tell me.
Sir, how do we, I am Dr. Aisha, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Sir, how do we see for LA appendage? Are there any other views and velocity for that blood flow across the LA appendage?
Yes. That's a very nice question. The left atrial appendage is usually visualized in the mid-esophageal 2-chamber view, where you get the left atrium and left ventricle. Focused view with the left atrial appendage on the right side of the image. And easily visualized. And if you want to look at the flow velocities in the left atrium, that will also indicate if there are formed clots, you can see them easily. But if it's not clear, you can look at the velocity profile in the left atrium, and if it is more than 40 centimeters per second, it may indicate the absence of the clots, but if the velocity is very low, then the clot may be present. And the differential diagnosis here will be the pectinate muscles in the left atrium. Sometimes the pectinate muscle may be prominent and you may mistake it for a thrombus. And this should be kept in differential diagnosis. And before doing a balloon mitral valvotomy, visualization of the left atrium through transesophageal echocardiography is indicated to exclude clots in the left atrium. So the presence of clots in the left atrium is usually considered as a contraindication for balloon mitral valvuloplasty. But there are guidelines to do balloon valvuloplasty in the presence of the clots, but those guidelines have to be taken very stringently because the presence of LA clot by itself is a contraindication for balloon mitral valvuloplasty.
Sir, one question from me.
Yes.
Sir, can we measure RVOT gradient in upper esophageal aortic arch short axis view?
IoT.
Because there is RVOT is almost parallel to the ultrasound beam.
No, in the BBS panel you can do that, but in the you're talking about RVOT inflow outflow view. This,
no, sir, upper esophageal aortic arch short axis view.
Yeah. You can do. That's a good view to do that. Actually, I showed that view with pulmonary valve on the left side. There you can.
Sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from any of the participants?
Thank you so much.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, might sound very silly, but how frequently do we get the deep transgastric long axis view at 0 to 20 degrees, where we can get the actually,
very nice question.
LVOT is very
nice
hard
question.
to find sometimes.
See, in some patients, it may be difficult. It all depends upon the orientation of the heart. Sometimes the heart position may not be exactly as normal as it should be. But having said that, in about 80 to 90%, we invariably get it. In next 10%, it may not be possible to get it, in which case you have to go for transgastric long axis at the mid papillary level, increase the angle to about 120 and get that this thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, one question from me.
Yes.
Sir, in the slides, you have shown that in transgastric two-chamber view, there is fish is seen. Sir, any specific reason?
The thing is, this one, I'll put it up again. I don't think. No, the fish is seen. No, what happened? No, that video was not running. There from, you can see this picture.
Yes, sir.
So this video is not running. This is a moving image where this was the angle. This angle was reduced from 120 to 10, and we saw the mitral valve basal short axis. Mitral valve short axis. So it was clearly visible. The fish mouth was visible very clearly. The anterior mitral leaflet and posterior mitral leaflet with the two commissures were visible. So fish was put there because that time the movie was playing.
Okay, sir.
So this is not appropriate here. You are right. This is not corresponding to what is shown here, but in the video, the video here is not running. The angle was coming down from 120 to 0, and then fish mouth was seen.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now I think time to close, and thank you so much for joining. Next week we'll meet. I think next week, I don't know what is the topic. I'll send you the list of topics, and then we will go ahead with the session. 9 o'clock sharp next week, Sunday. I think it is 24th. I think it is 24th. Okay. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all participants to joining this session. On next Sunday, 24th, we will be organizing a same class and we will update you on the group itself. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much to all.